Recently, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam proposed 4 actions to break the deadlock in Hong Kong: withdrawal of the fugitive bill, new members to be appointed to the Independent Police Complaints Council, more direct dialogue with all stakeholders, and the government to seek advice from community leaders, professionals, and academics. But will these 4 actions lift the city out of the current predicament? Can the withdrawal of the fugitive bill bring positive changes and lay a foundation for dialogue between the SAR government and the public? What will happen now students are returning to the classrooms? To talk about these and more, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Mr. Liao Fan, a professor of law from the Institute of International Law at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and Harvey Zodin, a senior fellow of the Center for China and Globalization. And also, we will talk to Hong Wei-min, Hong Kong deputy to the 13th National People's Congress via satellite from Hong Kong. And that is our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue. And for starters, I'd like to talk about the 4 actions taken by Chief Executive Carrie Lam. Do you think Carrie Lam's reactions, the proposals, are enough to respond to the requests of the protesters? Mr. Liao?
To be honest, when I first heard this news, I'm a little surprised, because this can be considered as sort of a concession to the opposition. But after second thought, I think this is a reasonable step, because given the split legislative council and given this strong public reaction, the fugitive bill is unable to pass the legislative council within this term, let's be honest. And given this protracted violence in Hong Kong, there need to be some step to sort of quiet down this whole situation and bring back the order. So I think this is, I think it is quite brave for Ms. Lam to make this decision at this moment.
Can you speculate the decision-making process of Carrie Lam? Why did she decide to pull back this bill at this moment? Why in this way?
Okay, I guess at this critical moment, with this uncertainty surrounding Hong Kong and with this protracted violence, and there need to be someone to break through this deadlock. And we know that actually in June, back in June, Ms. Lam has officially announced, the bill was dead. But actually the position, they were not satisfied, and the population, the public, maybe they feel that they need some more assurance that this bill will not be revived, even in theory. The possibility, even in theory, should be precluded. So I think at this moment, make this decision. This can send a signal to the public. This can be considered as a goodwill that the government, Hong Kong government, conveyed to the people that we are sincerely going to do something.
But how is the signal being received by the Hong Kong people is another problem. There are different views already. Some say it is too little too late. Some say it is a good starter, it's a good beginning. What do you think?
The business community thinks it's good, and that's why the Hong Kong stock market went up after it was announced. But I'm on the side of too little too late. That the other thing that she should do would be to appoint an independent investigatory commission with subpoena powers. The Police Overview Commission does not have that, is not seen as impartial. And so I believe that it would have calmed the situation much more and calmed the demonstrators to have an independent investigation, because there are a lot of things here that need to be investigated, and I don't believe that the demonstrators, at least even the reasonable ones, will be satisfied until there is an independent investigation.
Well, that seems to be a prevailing sentiment in Hong Kong. The protesters are not happy at all because it's too little too late, as Harvey just explained. And also, the inquiry team is not an independent council, but IPCC. It is under the supervision of the government. What do you say to that?
True, different people have different opinions, and different people have different interests. To what dialogue means, what compromise means, is that each party, each side, you should, consider the whole picture. You should not just insist on what you asked it for in the first place. So, it's I mean, the government has already showed their goodwill that they have accepted actually the first demand of the 5 demands. And actually they have, decided to absorb some international experts into the IPCC. I think this is a good, at least a very good start. And I guess the opposition should sincerely consider this, this choice.
What are the considerations behind Carrie Lam's choice of not setting up a totally independent council looking into police enforcement?
Because first,
what at stake there?
Because you need to decide what independent means. What do you mean by independent? I mean, this current IPCC, it has a diversified organization, and now it will have some international experts joining this commission. And if you are talking about independent, you have to have a criteria. What does independent means? Maybe you think, the opposing party think this new commission is independent, but maybe the government will think that's not independent. Maybe that's
so. Carrie Lam already said she has invited 2 senior members of the Hong Kong elites and also international experts to join in the panel of investigators. Why is that not good enough?
Well, for several reasons. Actually, many people think that the new appointees are in her camp, so not truly independent. The commission suffers from 2 major defects. The first defect is that it does not have subpoena power. So it can't subpoena witnesses, and it needs to subpoena witnesses. The second is its purview is only towards the police. And unfortunately, what's happened in this case is not only were demonstrators wearing face masks so they couldn't be identified, but many police were not wearing their badges or even their uniforms. So if you can't identify who the police are, you can't really investigate them. And so I believe those are 2 huge fatal flaws.
Okay, my question is, will these differences on how to investigate into police, law enforcement, and also whether to release those who have been already detained, will that spread into something even bigger, which is obviously not something that a lot of people want to see?
In terms of investigation, I think the investigation should go wherever it is. But I can almost guarantee you that what will spread bigger are the demonstrations if the demonstrators don't feel that the government's meeting them halfway. And I believe because of the conversations...
But the 2 sides have different definitions of where the halfway is. That's basically the problem.
Yeah, that's very true. But I think at a minimum, most people believe that there needs to be an independent investigation, that the police body is not independent. And so I think that we're going to continue to see problems, unfortunately.
I also want you to weigh in on the central government's response to this, because the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office said that although there are some positive signs, the situation is still very grim, and that what is happening in Hong Kong is a challenge to the foundation of Hong Kong society, that is 1 country, 2 systems. What do you make of this assessment?
It is complicated and it is grim. By the same token, I think we need to go back to the original legislation, the Basic Law, and also the Joint Agreement. There were 3 components to that. One component was 1 country, 2 systems. We all know about that. Another component was that Hong Kong would have substantial autonomy. And a third component was that Hong Kong people would be governing over Hong Kong. And the last one, the third one, seems to be what's been lost over time. And I think what people in Hong Kong feel is that the original position of 1 country, 2 systems has generally been eroded. So that's why I think that going back to an independent investigation is the best
Now,
way.
I want your take on this. Do you think the Hong Kong status of autonomy is facing the threat of being eroded?
Again, I guess that shows, how different, people, the view of people can be about the same thing. Actually, back in the mainland, I guess many people would think Hong Kong has enjoyed enough, or maybe more than enough, autonomy. Actually,
But those protesters obviously don't think
not
so.
enough. Actually, there has been a view within the mainland that actually, after the return of Hong Kong, we have attached too much importance to two systems, not enough importance to one country. Because actually, if you look at the basic law and look at the situation, actually the central government has not much to say when things are going like this violence, except for Article 18 of the basic law, or maybe Article 14 of the basic law. Besides that, there's not much thing that central government can do about Hong Kong. And I don't think that, the autonomy of Hong Kong people have been eroded by the central government by this way or that, because actually it still enjoyed high level of economy. They might be not satisfied with the Hong Kong government, but that's between the people and the Hong Kong government. That's not that their autonomy being eroded by the central government. I think that's two different things.
So what is your sense of those protesters are really against? Is it because of the government's inefficiency, corruption, or economic inequality, or they worry about really Hong Kong is not autonomous as they should be? Because as Mr. Liao pointed out, the mainland people think, well, the autonomy in Hong Kong is still there, intact. The Chinese central government hasn't been meddling with Hong Kong affairs as many people in Hong Kong thought.
We've been to Hong Kong many times, and from talking to Hong Kong people, I get the sense that people in Hong Kong love their motherland. Yes, there are some of these violent and extreme demonstrators who may not feel that way, but I'd say the vast majority of people do love the mainland and the motherland. But where I think there's a problem is they don't feel a sense of representation. They don't feel that they're being heard. And this is partly a structural problem because you have these structural situations where you have structured constituencies that are comprised of, let's call them fat cats and real estate investors and people like that who have the major say. So the middle class is really being precluded from enjoying the good life in Hong Kong. And you have people living in apartments that are no bigger and sometimes smaller than the size of one car in a parking lot. This is where people are getting frustrated.
Okay, I want the take of Mr. Hong on this. So, Mr. Hong, you are the Hong Kong deputy to the 13th National People's Congress. Do you think Carrie Lam's pledge to go to the grassroots, to have dialogues with different sectors of the society, will probably narrow the gaps on how Hong Kong elites should govern the city?
Well, first of all, I was actually in the audience before she made that announcement. Okay, so I can answer some of your previous questions why she decided it's now and not before, not after. But on the 4 actions, I support those 4 actions, but whether they will yield any results, I think it's too early to say. You just say, she mentioned building this platform to go to the grassroots, or not just grassroots, should be all aspects of life, and then having a dialogue. I think that's all fine. We need that anyway. We need that with or without this turmoil. But the thing is, for the protester itself as a community, apparently, or at least that they claim themselves to be a leaderless protest. In a leaderless protest, who can you have a dialogue with? You can't. Are you going to have a dialogue with every single one of those people who have been on the street? That is a deadlock there.
But does the government understand what they are asking, the protesters' 4 demands? Will that be met, or it is just out of the question?
No, the 4 demands, the other 4 demands, one of them is an invalid demand because there was no classification of riots per se. So technically that was no starter. The other 3, the government had declined, and I support their decision. Okay, so when you're talking about too little, too late, I may agree maybe it's a bit too late, but definitely not too little. The gentleman from the Global China for Globalization mentioned about this independent commission. Now, it's a very complicated issue, so I can't really explain it in the time given to me. But first of all, nobody.
But do you think that is a
independent.
prominent
When you-
question facing the Hong Kong government right now? Will that
It-
lead
it
to
is,
more
and I strongly-
confrontations between the government and the protesters? They think differently on that.
If she agrees on that request, she will face confrontation from us. You have to understand, Hong Kong have different communities, and different communities have different demands, and they have also, because of their background knowledge and everything, they have different judgment. Okay, on the independent commission, there's a few things that it's definitely a non-starter. Number one, nobody is independent. Okay, not you, not me, not the chief executive, not the judges. There are several judges expressed their views for or against. Okay, that's why there will be an endless argument. Number two is on the scope of investigation. Okay, there will be a huge argument on that as well. So, and another thing is, while the riots are still going on, if you have such a commission form, first of all, can the police still arrest the rioters? Can they still stop the violence? Because here you are, you have an investigation commission will investigate in this. So, you know, also when you say you have a subpoena power, now I am not sure if you can actually have a commission. I know there's a law on that, but whether you can actually do that on civilians.
I want Harvey respond to this. Harvey, you have something to say.
I take your point about the independent commission not being able to fully operate in the midst of this kind of civil insurrection. So if I were Carrie Lam, what I would do is, and I think she has bargaining power on this, tell the protesters, look, I'm going to appoint an independent commission, but the condition is that there only be peaceful protests, and that if there's any violence, we'll deal with those violent people extremely seriously and bring the full force of the law.
But there's a leader in this movement. There's nobody to talk to.
Leaderless. But I maintain that most of the people there feel aggrieved, and I think most of them will forbear if they feel that they're getting enough.
We have to take a short break, and we'll come back on discussions on the economic aspect of what is going on in Hong Kong. Don't go away. Be right back. I also want you to weigh in on the economic effects of this, because the same day Carrie Lam proposed 4 actions, Hong Kong stocks closed up 995 points. That's 3.9%. But on the other hand, Fitch just downgraded Hong Kong's credit rating from AA+ to AA. What is the economic prospects for Hong Kong? Do you think enough is enough, or it will probably drag on for a longer time down the road? Harvey?
I think that the big bump up in the stock market was wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking from the investors?
From the investors. They're grasping for any straw. It's the same with the trade negotiations between China and U.S. Anytime there's a hopeful sign for those few minutes, the stock market goes up and only comes down again. And I think Hong Kong's basically the same. So I don't think we can answer that question yet until we know what's going to happen in the near and middle term. But it's obvious that these demonstrations and insurrections and the Molotov cocktails and all those other terrible things that are going on are affecting the economy. And Hong Kong is actually in some danger of going into recession. The signs do not look good.
Do you think Hong Kong people and even those protesters and the silent majority who remain on the sidelines understand the consequences of what is going on in Hong Kong and the blow to the Hong Kong economy?
I'm not sure if they have a very clear understanding of the whole picture, because obviously the democracy or freedom of speech, those kind of things, I think it's just a fuse. I mean, the root of this whole event, I think, is still economic. I mean, the rocketing housing price, I mean, the uncertainty, especially for the young people, of their future. I mean, not enough job opportunities for them after graduating from the universities. And all these kind of things compared with what Hong Kong used to be in 1990s, I mean, those glorious times, I mean, gave them a very strong impression. And they have, I guess, very much unsatisfaction.
Okay. And Mr. Hong, I want your take on this, because a lot of people wondering why the protesters, when they were asking for the withdrawal of the fugitive bill and investigation into police handling of the unrest, they haven't raised any economic issues on the table, such as economic inequality, how to have land reform in Hong Kong, those kind of things.
I think the reason why they didn't, I can't give because I'm not them. But one observation would be is they think they're on moral high grounds, and on the other things, there are different views, obviously. And also, those who are supporting the withdrawal of the fugitive include both the grassroots, but also the middle class and some of the very rich fat cats. So I think that's why it's very hard to, this whole conglomerate to think, to pick that request.
But
I think
is it part of the reasons why there
Beijing
are tens of thousands of people marching on the streets? Some of them have grievances against economic inequality and lack of opportunities to move up the social ladder.
Oh, there's definitely more than just some. But I think for those of you, my friends in Beijing, I think there are two things you have to understand. Number one, who tell you there is a silent majority? I'm afraid that may not exist anymore. The society is so divided today. I honestly think the numbers of the so-called silent majority is shrinking to almost, insignificant.
So you are saying they're not silent any longer?
They are not silent any longer, but they may not be able to get their voice across because you do read them on the media. Okay, the media is almost only 100% one-sided. So if you want to talk to the local, for example, taxi drivers, small restaurant owners, tour guides, all those people who are in the grassroots, who have been adversely affected in terms of their breadline. Okay, I know that some of my friends who are really front-end tourist agents, they're making 1/10 of their original income. Okay,
but they haven't made their voices heard politically. As you said, there are lack of media outlets for these people to air their opinions.
They're not silent. They're putting it on Facebook sometimes, but then Facebook may not allow them to, may not share their posts. I think another thing you please understand is that a group of people in the protester, admittedly not very large group, but their motto is called "Perish Together." Are you aware of that?
Yes.
So
one slogan is that if we perish, let's perish it together.
No,
if we burn,
not just that.
Let's burn together.
That was just the original. There was this Hunger Game thing, but no. Actually, they said we want us to perish together, not because I burn, you burn, but I want to burn with you.
So it seems there is no chances of dying down of this anytime soon, even if there is concessions from Carrie Lam.
No. I tell you what, if the peaceful demonstrators, the peaceful protesters, agree to separate themselves from the violent minority of the protesters, the Hong Kong police have every ability to arrest and stop the violence, full stop. Okay, if you look at the real violent people, there's probably like a bit over 1,000. Okay, and maybe about 2,000 or 3,000 people doing logistic work. So there's not a huge crowd against the hundreds of thousands of the peaceful demonstrators. But the thing is, they work together, right? Every time, for example, even what happened in the airport previously, most people were peaceful, but there were few violent people. Another thing is, I think what we need to do is persuade those people. I mean, I honestly saying there is legitimate and real problems in Hong Kong, and they are not within those 5 requests. They are in the areas of so-called social injustice, but at least on the income inequality, asset inequality, upward mobility, housing costs, retirement worries, all these things are valid. And
but all these deeper problems can only be resolved in a peaceful and rational environment where everybody is cooled down and ready to talk. Do you think it is time already now?
I think it's not a matter of whether it's time or not. I think the good thing about Carrie Do is for the first time in the history of the SAR government, that the administration actually admit there are deep problems and they're willing to evaluate and have a real dialogue with and also invite, you know, what she called community leaders. Okay, because I have no idea who they are. Now, because previously, you know, I've been working with the Hong Kong government for a long time in various aspects in committees, and also I was in the central policy units. But there was never, I've never seen a official admission that, there are these problems.
All right.
So acknowledging their problem is a good start. Now, how to solve it is not an easy task because there are various, as I said, there are various stakeholders. For example, about 49% of the Hong Kong people are house owners. So if you take if property prices goes down, this 49 will have a problem.
Okay. It's a dilemma.
It's almost half.
Okay,
right
let's
now.
come back to our studio discussions. Mr. Hong mentioned those deeper problems, which are very hard and very complicated. But can the Hong Kong government address those issues when there are demonstrations and probably violent behaviors on the streets? Is it the right time? Can they proceed in such an environment?
It's not the right time, as we discussed before, but I believe that we should put the comment to the test that you can't separate the peaceful demonstrators from the violent ones by offering them the opportunity to the government propose an independent investigatory commission if there are only peaceful protests.
Thank you, Harvey, and thank you, Mr. Liao, for your perspectives. You've been watching Dialogue here on CGTN. I'm Joe in Beijing. Goodbye for now.